We really appreciate you hopping on the live presentation of our new literacy standards. Feeling very excited to share these with families and so that we can hopefully make our next round of parent-teacher conferences really in-depth and thoughtful about supporting our students' literacy journey. Just so you know, we are going to record this event to share out to families who are not able to attend today. We will leave time for questions at the end. A point of to note, if you have a question as we're going through our presentation, we would politely ask if you can chat those directly to Sarah James, who is a co-host of the meeting. Sarah will work hard to collate those questions for us to go over at the end. And like I said, Sarah, if you feel like it's pertinent to interrupt us to explain something more in depth with a question, please feel free to do so. But again, we'll leave plenty of time at the end of the presentation to answer questions that you might have. Following the presentation, we will share both the recording and a list of the new literacy standards that we've worked so hard to complete. So without further ado, let's get rolling. Zoom presentations are sometimes a little tricky, but it's really wonderful to have all of you friends here with us. I want to introduce some of our friends who were very helpful, not just in this presentation, but in this new formulation of new literacy standards. So we have joining us Miss Bien today, who is the head of lower school. She and I work very closely in thinking about how these reading standards are reflected in your progress reports. Welcoming our learning specialists, Miss Simon and Miss Kiernan, who were very integral members of the task force in updating these new standards and are literacy leaders in the community. And then we have some friends from upstairs and downstairs joining us as well. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And let's roll. Okay, so the headline is that we have new literacy standards in our progress reports that are different from our previous reading and writing standards in our previous progress reports. So today in our presentation, we're going to talk in depth about the history of our work here at Advent around literacy instruction, thinking about assessments, the data we get for students, thinking about all the components that went into this update. We'll talk explicitly about the why behind it, how we got there, and then we'll end with sharing with you some of our updated progress report standards so that we can take a look at them together. And let's roll. So why for Advent is a big question. So what we have found in our work over the last, and it's been years, decade plus of work in updating our literacy standards, is that coming to this point of aligning our literacy standards to the science of reading and to the science of writing is really essential to ensuring that student growth is measured using evidence-based practices. This is something we've worked very hard on as a faculty and administration over the last decade. When progress monitoring reflects the core components of reading and writing, like phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, sentence structure, and comprehension, both educators and families can gain a clear and accurate picture of your child's literacy development. So this alignment not only highlights specific areas of strength, but also where your student has specific areas of growth that are necessary, right? When we think about a student's literacy journey, it's not often all in one line. There's often components that we're thinking very critically about improving for them and providing them with direct instruction so that they can grow to the best of their ability. By grounding our progress reports in the science of reading and the science of writing, Advent as a school can better communicate student progress more meaningfully and foster stronger homeschool partnerships to support your child's literacy success. So in the last couple of years, Advent has made a very concerted effort to integrate curricula into our literacy program that aligns with the principles and science of reading and writing. We believe that literacy is a fundamental human right. I like to say that literacy is social justice, which closely reflects our mission. Part of honoring this human right involves how we collect and report data from our formal assessments, our observations, and report it in our progress reports. We are committed to providing our students and their families with accurate and informative information about your students' specific reading and writing development, aligned with all of those research-based practices. So the how do we get here? So Last year, we did a full faculty vertical alignment literacy PD where all teachers, not just the classroom teachers, but also the movement teachers like PE and yoga, and our atelier teachers who integrate art and science, our Spanish teachers, our language teachers, to think about how they can also work together with us to promote strong literacy development for their students. Within this group of faculty, we had a specific working group who sort of broke off, who sort of started to look at our vertical alignment of reading and writing strategies and how we could better reflect those in our progress report. So the what is, we updated the literacy standards in our progress report, and we're really excited to share them with you today. So just a big idea summary before we get into the weeds. At Advent, we believe literacy is a fundamental human right. Literacy is social justice. Advent's literacy instruction is grounded in research-based practices. We are updating our progress reports to better reflect how reading and writing are taught and assessed in classrooms. And these updates, again, are aimed to help families better understand your child's reading strengths, their writing strengths, and their next steps. You may see some pictures of your kiddos reading, so feel free to send a note to Sarah if you see your kiddo reading on one of these slides.
So let's talk about how we got here. When we think about what we have done over the past about decade, I would say when we're thinking about long-term faculty work, this has been a focus of our work at Advent with teachers for the better half of this last decade. We've worked alongside faculty to evolve the precision of our literacy teaching practices, thinking about the shift from whole language learning to phonemic awareness and uplifting the really strong foundational skills that allow our students to thrive once they dive into more challenging texts. A lot of this work happens in teaching team meetings with either myself or Erik, as well as the full faculty PD pieces that Erik was talking about earlier. This has also been a giant national conversation. This is by no means just an Advent conversation. In 2020, when there was really nothing else major going on in the world, there was also a big conversation going on around the science of reading, highlighting concerns about the literacy approaches that were being used that were very whole reading, whole language focused. And it was spearheaded by special educators and learning specialists who recognized this research for years prior and had been evolving it in their spaces. And at that point, we had already been thinking about this at Advent as well, and what we were using to assess our students and how we were thinking about phonics instruction in our classrooms. All of this research showed that children learn to read best through explicit systematic instruction. So not just by reading with them and giving them books, but really breaking down the word parts and all of the phonemic awareness pieces to uplift their decoding strategies so that they have the skills to attack words when they hit more challenging words. And what changed because of all of this is that schools across the country began re-examining curriculums, trainings, and assessment practices. So we had already been engaged in pieces of this work at Advent, but shifting from the pieces around the Fontes and Pinnell reading instruction, which was largely comprehension focused, to thinking about actually finding an assessment system that showed what our kids knew about phonemic awareness and decoding. What could they do and what did they know about word parts to help us better understand their reading strategies?
Okay, let's take a look at the reading rope. So the reading rope explains skilled reading as the result of two tightly woven strands, word recognition and language comprehension. Over time, these strands become increasingly automatic and integrated. The word recognition strand forms the foundation of reading. So we're thinking about decoding. It also includes phonological awareness and sight word recognition. Together, these skills allow readers to accurately and efficiently identify written words. As word recognition becomes more automatic, readers no longer need to devote significant cognitive energy to decoding out words. This frees their mental resources to focus on meaning, reasoning, and understanding the text, which is our goal. Without strong word recognition, comprehension is limited, making this strand essential for developing fluent readers, confident, and independent readers.
Thank you, Maura. So to uplift what Maura was saying in connection to what Ms. Bean was saying, right? The base of this reading rope is really around word recognition. So the fluency that a student can gain with automaticity and being able to read easily, right? So that science of reading controversy, that sold the story controversy that came out in 2020, the big headline from this was that students need direct instruction in phonological awareness, in decoding, and need to build their sight recognition in order to be the best readers they can be. And this was different than a lot of what other educational publishers were pushing at the time. So that's where kind of that controversy came from. Now a note on the writing rope, equally
Yes.
important.
Yep. So the writing rope is similar to the reading rope in that the framework explains that writing isn't just one skill. It's actually a braid of 5 skills that are all working together to create fluent, skilled written expression. The rope depends on strong foundational skills in transcription, which is often the physical aspect of writing. Once transcription becomes automatic, the brain is able to start more fluently incorporating and devoting more cognitive energy to more complex skills, such as word choice and audience, patterns of organization and writing structure, grammar and syntax, and idea generation and writing processes. For example, if a student is still solidifying how to form their letters and spell letter sounds, it's going to be tricky for them cognitively to have higher level word choice, syntax knowledge, and critical thinking. Similarly to the reading rope, if foundational skills are weak, then it makes composition harder for students and also a weaker rope. Just like having poor word recognition skills can constrain reading for children.
So thinking about how these components of the reading rope and the writing rope interact, we had a big objective on our table. Amanda, you want to take this one?
Yeah. So our big objective was to bolster our teaching practices in comprehensive ways, beginning with selecting high quality curriculum resources that were aligned with the science of reading. So what we did here is we actually pulled together a vertical team of teachers and allowed them to audit a variety of different curriculums prior to selecting one that we felt fit Advent well. And this is how we ended up using Really Great Reading. We tested out about 5 or 6 in a variety of different classroom spaces, got feedback from teachers, and thought through as a department, okay, what does this mean for Advent before selecting Really Great Reading? This shift impacted our classrooms in many positive ways over time. They showed up in our assessment data for all students. You'll hear a little bit more about that later, but especially for our students with diagnoses of specific learning disabilities in reading. And our assessment practices were already aligned with the science of reading as we moved into this objective. We had been transitioning from our Fontes and Pinnell reading assessments to using DIBELS. At that point, when we had just started looking at this, we were using DIBELS as a screener for students who weren't performing at grade level expectations on their Fontes and Pinnell comprehension assessments. And we're realizing that moving to DIBELS as a whole school assessment made far more sense for us in order to really assess those foundational reading skills that would then lead to better, more fluent reading and stronger comprehension.
So you may be wondering why there is a picture of the mascot of the University of Oregon on a few of our slides, who looks kind of like Donald Duck. The University of Oregon is actually the publisher of the DIBELS reading assessment. I firmly believe that this is a social justice mission of the University of Oregon, because not only is it a research-aligned reading assessment tool that works very well for those base skills of the reading rope, but also the higher level skills in terms of comprehension as the student gets older. but it's free. And so I love that the University of Oregon has published such a wonderful comprehension tool that we can utilize as much as we need to. So as Amanda mentioned, these shifts were in place before the big controversy at hand, right? And to summarize, what our big idea was is that we needed to build the core skills, sort of the baseline skills of those reading and writing ropes with our youngest students to be as strong as they could be as they got older, right? A phrase I did not invent, but I often use is that effective instruction in phonics, right? It's good for all, even our very strongest readers, right? Because as they get older and they experience more complex text, having those decoding and word tax strategies and understanding word roots becomes really, really important and will add to their ability to think through those challenging texts. But it's also necessary for some, right? So that added time on task of really comprehensively building those core reading skills is really, really important. So as Amanda mentioned, our first step was we need to update our primary curriculum resources. So let's talk about a few of those. If you've seen Amanda and I's presentation on literacy at Advent, this may be a little bit redundant, but we'll go through them quickly.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about why we chose Really Great Reading. So we selected Really Great Reading as our primary phonics program because it is strongly aligned with the science of reading. The program is grounded in decades of research that show how students learn to read most effectively through explicit systematic instruction in phonological awareness and phonics. Really Great Reading provides structured sequential lessons that build from simple to more complex texts, ensuring that students develop a strong foundation in word recognition. Our goal: instruction is direct, intentional, and it includes ample opportunities for practice and immediate feedback, which is essential for helping students' skills become automatic. By emphasizing accurate decoding, sound symbol relationships, and cumulative review, Really Great Reading supports the development of fluent readers who can focus their cognitive energy on comprehension. This research-based approach helps ensure that all students, including those who struggle, who need those interventions, receive the instruction they need to become confident and successful readers. And there's ample opportunities for differentiation within this curriculum, which is another reason we chose it. Our current fourth grade class, who I've worked very closely with, started the program in first grade and has continued with its structured scope and sequence throughout the years. And because they started with Really Great Readings instruction early and consistently, they were able to build automatic word recognition over time. And this foundation, I've seen firsthand, has helped them devote more of their cognitive energy to comprehension, higher level thinking, and engagement with complex texts as they've been progressing through the grades.
Thank you, Maura. Another big update that we made was bringing back Wordly Wise into the upper grades starting in fourth grade. Wordly Wise is a research-based vocabulary curriculum that teachers can use in their classroom. I really love Wordly Wise. Vocabulary is one of my favorite parts of the reading rope to dissect and think about how kids can really build a strong lexicon, having knowledge of words. What I love about Wordly Wise is I think there's 20 units in Wordly Wise with roughly 20 words per unit. So they're going to get 400 brand new spicy vocabulary words a year. But more importantly than that, what it really does is it encourages vocabulary behavior within its practice, right? So how students are able to come across a word in context, decode the word effectively, and apply some inferring skills to get a sense of that. But it also encourages a greater understanding of grammar. It encourages a greater understanding of comprehension as a whole. And it gives students lots of very different types of practices for building a skill set to incorporating new words into their lexicon. So it's not just about the 400 spicy words that they get in the course of a year, but it's about building those skills that will aid in their reading comprehension and academic success.
For writing, we chose the Hoffman Writing Revolution. It's a research-based approach that believes writing should be broken down into clear, manageable steps that are taught explicitly and embedded within all aspects of the curriculum. The Writing Revolution emphasizes that sentences are the building blocks to all writing, and that students need to learn explicitly how to write because they cannot write well if they cannot draft clear, complex sentences. So if you're thinking back to the writing rope, Hockman focuses a lot on the syntax strand to build a strong base. So students start by focusing on sentence structure and construction, which allows students to learn how to express their ideas coherently and clearly. Students learn basic sentence structure with kernels like the dog sat. And then students began expanding these kernels using because, but, so, and answering who, what, when, where, and how to add detail and depth to their writing. From these very basic sentence constructions, students then learn how to construct single paragraphs, multi-paragraphs, and also composition as well. The writing revolution fits very nicely with the Advent academics because it emphasizes the importance of direct instruction being embedded into each curricular area rather than it being taught as an isolated skill. So for example, the written work done in R&I and in book groups and in math can be used to teach grammar, planning, and revision. We know that writing about what you're learning and meaningfully applying the skills you're learning increases your comprehension and also your understanding about a concept.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Just to uplift that a little bit, I think that myself and a number of faculty, one of the biggest appeals to the Hockman method was what Ms. Simon was just talking about, right? So we were thinking about other parts of our school identity, like around sustained inquiry, Reggio practices in emergent projects and project-based teaching. Hockman method kind of connects or interacts with sustained inquiry or emergent learning very, very well, because like Ms. Simon said, you can take the content that's being explored in the classroom and use that as a source to teach all of those core skills like syntax and grammar and expanding detail. So it sinks in really nicely with other aspects of our curriculum.
All right, so I'll speak a little bit to our vertical alignment that we began last school year. Our whole faculty engaged in a full year professional development process focused on examining our literacy practices and how they intersect with every discipline. We unpacked the components of science of reading, the reading rope, and examined how evidence from the science of reading informs effective instruction. In this process, we dispelled common misconceptions about literacy and highlighted research-aligned best practices. Our ultimate goal was to promote thrivability in literacy, not just competence across both lower and upper school by building a common understanding of what strong literacy instruction looks like. We asked important questions such as how do we work together to build essential literacy skills across contexts and content areas? What specific skills and instructional practices can we encourage to promote student thrivability in literacy? How can we strengthen our literacy program more quickly and coherently? This collaborative, research-rooted PD equipped our teachers with shared language, aligned practices, and practical strategies that are grounded in what research shows works best for building strong readers.
As a very small example to uplift what Maura was talking about a month ago, I was at the copy machine and found a worksheet of yoga vocabulary that was being integrated into instruction in the movement space, which made my heart happy to know that vocabulary was a strand that was being approached in all of our spaces. Similarly, Ms. Fireman approached me at the beginning of the year as the sixth graders were starting their journey into the school play and specifically asked me to think about how she could best inform their students and get them to be thoughtful about some of the vocabulary that was used in the play, because it does take place, I think, a long time ago, and has some different vernacular in there. So like Maura was saying, we're really thinking about how all the teachers are building the thrivability of literacy instruction here at Advent. Our last two guiding questions that were guiding our vertical alignment PD last year, we were really thinking critically about what does an ECC through sixth grade progression of skills look like for Advent, right? So those sort of power standards that build upon one another. So the core instruction that students get on phonemes in kindergarten and how that progresses to first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. We were also really thinking critically about how different social identifiers interact with this. Thinking about, for example, how neurodiversity interacts with this. So how can we strengthen or leverage how can we leverage a student's strengths to foster growth so that they're evenly developed as a reader or as a writer? We had teachers breaking up and exploring in working groups, and one of our working groups was specifically thinking about this progression of skills over time and was comparing it to some of the progress report standards that we used to have for reading and writing. And I think already knowing going into this working group that we needed some updates, right? I think that those updates were essential because A, of the work we've been doing, right, over the last 10 years, which Amanda has been speaking about, but B, that there was a lot more that sort of wasn't being communicated to families in terms of what their students' literacy journey was, that we could be much more explicit about in terms of a student's strengths and their growth points and how we're addressing those growth points through direct instruction. So this was really important to us as a school, excuse me, and kind of coming to this final step of how we can communicate our literacy instruction better to families. So this year, our literacy leaders united, right? We started a task force, which Ms. Kiernan and Ms. Simon were both helpful leaders on, and we had one teacher from every grade level. So a group of literacy leaders came together to look at our assessments, how we're using them, the type of data that we can get from students, and to think about each of those core components of the reading rope, the writing rope, and also remembering that literacy is also verbal communication and discussion, and how those things are being addressed at the Advent School and how we can communicate them better to families.
So let's start to talk about what is reflected in our standards. So at Advent, literacy doesn't just happen in isolation. It's deeply connected to our project-based teaching and inquiry work. Our students ask provocative questions, explain answers, and use writing to make claims and construct meaning. In this way, literacy becomes an active process of inquiry, not just a skill, but a way of thinking and communicating across disciplines. So we paid close attention to the inquiry work we do when thinking about these strands, as well as the reading, writing, and speaking and listening components.
Thank you, Norma. All right, so without further ado, we're finally at the what. So the what is, let's take a look. We're going to select just 3 grade levels to share with you friends today. We'll look at kindergarten, we'll look at 2nd grade, and we'll look at 4th grade. And we'll sort of go through the components for each of those grades right now. Following the presentation, along with a recording of this, we're going to share this recording plus a PDF that has all of our grade level standards from kindergarten to 6th grade, so that families can see them all together to see how skills progress over time. But let's dive into kindergarten.
So our kindergarten standards started shifting last year, and we solidified them this fall. What you'll recognize as we go through them is that they are those foundational levels on the reading and writing ropes. So you're going to see far more word recognition, decoding, and transcribing pieces than those higher level critical thinking and syntax pieces that you'll see as the grades progress. Our kindergarten standards start with identifying, blending, and segmenting sounds in spoken words to include beginning, middle, and end sounds. So really thinking about what our youngest students know about word parts from just hearing them, and thinking about, if I say the word cat, can they segment that into k-at to get back to cat? As we build on that in the first part of the year, we're looking for students to recognize their uppercase and lowercase letters and connect them to the sounds. So really thinking about that letter sound recognition piece that goes into decoding words as they begin to decode CBC words. As they come to the end of the year, so a second term goal is that they are able to decode all of their CBC words. So really thinking for that first progress report that we are able to recognize and name all of the letters and begin to associate them with sounds. And in the second half of the year, we have solidified that CVC, consonant, vowel, consonant word decoding. We are thinking about reading and writing grade level appropriate high frequency words with increasing automaticity. Sight word acquisition is an incredibly challenging task for most young children. And so really thinking about that wording of increased automaticity, we're not looking for them to do it all of the time with every single sight word, but really to begin becoming automatic with their sight word acquisition. They'll have a few of them down pat by the time they leave kindergarten so that they're able to really jumpstart that in first grade. Shifting a little bit into writing and thinking about how we demonstrate understanding of basic print concepts such as left-right directionality when they're writing, spacing between their words, and also thinking about what that writing then looks like in a book. Where are the page numbers? Where is the illustrations? What is a title? And how do those things interact with written text? Thinking about expressing ideas through drawing and dictation, you'll get some early writing in kindergarten, but really moving from forming things that look like letters to phonemically spelling words towards the end of the school year. But you'll see a wide range of written skill through kindergarten and thinking about really just how are they able to express their ideas through that written and drawing work. Forming letters legibly with correct pencil grip hits on that transcription piece of the writing rope. And then really leaning into the speaking and listening pieces of participating in conversations, listening actively to stories, and beginning that questioning and commenting to start building those beginning comprehension skills. Thinking about how they participate in whole group activities and think about how they show understanding of a story by sequencing will all lead into more complex, independent comprehension skills as they go into first and then second grade.
Okay, so by second grade, the writing rope and the reading rope is strengthening. And so within these standards, you can see how the foundational skills that were taught in kindergarten have increased and started to solidify by second grade. Noticeably, by second grade, students are increasingly automatic and fluent and have stronger language comprehension as these reading rope strands are tightening. Students also, their decoding and phonological skills have become more sophisticated. So instead of reading CBC words and learning letter sounds, second graders are reading more trigraphs, blends, multisyllabic words, short and long vowel patterns as well. Students also begin to use morphology and context clues to apply and understand new vocabulary. And these skills are all reflected in our standards. So the standards are also reflecting students' increased fluency and accuracy, which are skills that are a result of strong word recognition skills and the strengthening of that language comprehension on the reading rope. These skills were built in kindergarten, as Amanda just mentioned, but in second grade, you can really start to see the shift between building vocabulary and the word solving skills through using morphology, and also the impact that reading fluency has, in terms of increased rate, accuracy, and expression. With greater fluency, the standards reflect this shift that we see in students, also their cognitive load, so that they can focus more on meaning and the understanding of texts, which leads to deeper comprehension. Students' foundational writing skills have also strengthened, and our standards reflect this as well. Students are forming their letters and words more legibly, and they're also strengthening these skills to more automatically apply complex phonics patterns to their writing. Whereas in kindergarten, students are still solidifying their basic sounds and phonics skills. So by second grade, students can focus on syntax, text structure, and critical thinking with more focus on grammar, idea organization, and different text structures within their writing.
All right. Now it's kind of exciting because we're at fourth grade and you can really see how our goals for reading and writing for a fourth grade student moving along their rope, they've come so far. So when we think about literacy in fourth grade through the ropes, we can see how the skills we want students to develop and map directly to both major strands of reading and writing are here in our standards. The lower strands of the rope, word recognition, are reflected in the students' fluent, accurate reading and their ability to spell using patterns and word structures, which are here, because these foundational skills help students read words effortlessly. As word recognition becomes more automatic, students are freed up to focus on meaning. At the same time, the upper strands of the rope, language comprehension, which you can see here in the middle too, reflect the student's ability to understand grade level text, make inferences, and use and apply vocabulary, summarize main ideas, and support their thinking with evidence. The way students participate in discussions and organize ideas in writing are also reflected here. Their growing background knowledge, reasoning, and understanding of text structure. So we really see how the ropes are really coming together and connecting by fourth grade. And fluent word recognition paired with deep comprehension and expressive writing, helping students shift from learning to read to reading to learn as they engage with more texts.
All right, last slide of information. Wanted to share this one because very proud of our fifth graders. So I'm going to give you a little bit of snippet of some data we got from our MAPS growth assessment recently. You may have seen these in newsletters from our friends upstairs and from our friend Bill. We shared these recently with the board, but also with our faculty to think about our students and how they performed in the fifth grade on their MAPS. So the MAPS is a standardized test that we use here at Advent for students starting in the third grade. And we deep dove into the data that we were getting from the MAPS because when the students take their reading subtest, they need every single one of those strands of the reading rope in order to do their very, very best. And we were very, very proud of our fifth graders this year and how well they did on their reading on their MAPS. Proud of math too, but that's a different presentation. But like I said, they need all of those components of the reading rope, right? So fluency, right? And being able to quickly gain meaning and interpretation from the text that they're reading. So this represents a percentile rank. So when students take the MAPS, they are given a percentile rank. So if a student got an 80th percentile rank, that means that they did better than 79% of the fifth graders who took the test across the entire world that term. And our mean or average score for our fifth graders was 88th percentile, which is pretty amazing, right? Even more amazing when you look at the median score for their percentile ranks, the median score was 92%. Right. So what we're seeing, and it should be noted that when we were talking about really great reading, this was the first class who got their first batch of really great reading when we made that switch. So we can really see that these students, by and large, as a whole, the fifth graders have a nice tight reading rope by the time they get to fifth grade. Mr. Wharton also really encouraged me to think about looking at skills and they progress on the MAPS over subsequent administration. So when they take that test as a third grader, again as a fourth grader 2 times, and again as a fifth grader, and we can see that as students get older, right, our scores are improving. So their reading rope is getting stronger and stronger as a whole. Right. They're also getting used to taking a standardized test, which probably helps too. But what we're seeing is that their reading skills are showing that they have the ability to show that they are good, strong readers by and large. So really, really proud of them as a group. I could share many different grades and how proud I am everybody took it, but I just wanted to share the fifth one with you today. So before we get to questions, I just did want to thank, these are the teachers who participated in the task force this year. Task forces as a professional development, there's a lot of work that the teachers do. So I'm very, very thankful for their participation within the task force. So Ms. Kiernan helped me a lot with the organization and the presentation of this, along with Ms. Simon, but wanted to thank Ms. Vega, Ms. Adler, Ms. Natrar, Ms. Simon, Ms. Boswell, Ms. Kiernan, Ms. Simons, Mr. Eric from the fifth grade, Ms. Collins, our librarian, joined us. So they were all very integral and thoughtful partners in thinking about updating our school progress reports. All of the faculty has been interacting with us in a really positive way, and I'm really proud of them. So I want to thank all of them for their work last year and in previous years. Ms. Bean is my constant thought partner, so definitely thanks to her. Ms. Price, who's no longer at Advent, is a literacy guru and one of the first people I call when I have a question or a thought about reading, so I want to thank her. And lastly, Kate Kovacs helped us get them into Blacklog for their progress reports this year, so thanks to Kate. And thank you for joining us today. We really